are going to talk about a topic today that I'm really excited about. Date men, not boys. The 5 M's to tell the right man from the wrong boys. So I know this topic is going to catch the attention of a lot of women, and I wonder if you can just start by telling us why you've chosen this topic, and then let's just take it from there.
Yeah, look, I mean, part of the value of doing the daily podcast, for instance, is that I think of all this as more of a conversation where I'm listening to and observing and feeling the needs of women who are in these experiences out there. Like, what are you going through? That was definitely my upbringing, right? As someone who cared about his mom, 8 years old, 10, 12, 15, it's like, I could feel what people are going through and being able to be responsive for that and provide solutions that are relevant. So the date men, not boys idea came very much out of that. I was doing blog articles and a newsletter. I would send out email list. People can find that on my website if they want to receive that kind of thing. But what I got back out of it was conversational in that sense of I noticed which things people would email me right after and be like, oh, wow, that really hit a nerve with me. Date men, not boys. I believe the actual article title at the time was, Are You Tired of Dating Men Who Act Like Boys? And it definitely got a strong response. It's like, boy, there's something here. So I really went deeper with that. And I offered an online training and explored it. And I'm always asking myself, Michelle, what can I bring that's helpful to people that they may not already understand or know? Like, what's the value of my perspective? Which I think, you're doing the man panel. Like, I'm a man. Who am I to tell women anything about their experience of things? All I ever want to do is show up and offer what I can see as a passenger in that journey, having observed my mom and many women now, but also having male perspective. I understand the male mind and experience in a way that may offer some value. So that's why I started to teach the date men, not boys. I can help you understand maybe how to identify the difference between a man or a boy, make it a little clearer. And then, of course, that opens up a whole new bunch of questions once you know that. But for today, hopefully we can help provide a little insight that way.
Yeah, I'm really excited about hearing what you have to share. I do want to ask you one other more personal question first, Barry, if it's okay.
Yeah.
So I'm curious about this journey you were on with your mother, because you said this began like at the age of 8 years old.
Yes.
And that you were helping support her. And I would just like to hear a little bit more about that. I'm a little bit curious about how you had that wisdom at such a young age and were able to help your mother even as a youth, so to speak.
Yeah, necessity is the mother of invention. It's not a coincidence the word mother is in that phrase too. So, I have a sister who is almost 10 years older than me. And so there was a relationship between all of us in that home. But when she got to the age to go to college and she left, then it was me and mom in that lifeboat, so to speak. And I say lifeboat only because there were waves, there were ups and downs. So, I would get to see how excited she'd be on a Friday night, 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock, because she had a date, right? And the whole ritual would begin. Black dress, red dress, and how do you give answers? You just sort of learn as you go. So it's like, well, I don't know. Why would you wear that one? Why would you wear this one? And if I'm trying to say this, I'm going to wear this, but I don't know. This one's more fun. And just going through that process of watching her put on, I think at the time was Chanel No. 5 or Charlie, depending on which perfume, was it. And then coming home and her sitting down at the table and what else were we going to do? But, I was curious. How did it go? What was he like? Did he pull out your chair? Did he talk about his ex-wife? What kind of guy is he? And also, of course, through all of that, you want to see your mom happy. But I also am aware this guy might be part of my life. Like, I want to know, tell me a little bit about this person you're starting to see. To her credit, too, and like so many moms I've coached, they're very intentional about who they want to allow in that door, into that home around the children, if they don't have grown children who are out of the house. And so I went through those ups and downs. I saw what it looked like if he didn't call back that week. And she, her hopes were dashed. And I just wanted to help her be happy. I didn't have the training, the tools I do now. So I'm sure I didn't do as well at it then as if I had her now as a client. But I cared so deeply that I could feel what she was going through. So I did the best I could. Yeah, growing up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's so sweet to think of you being there for your mom in that way during that period of time growing up.
Mm-hmm.
So then you said you personally kind of went through kind of the shy, nice guy as a teenager. Then you turned into the player. Now you're the committed man.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit more about that, and then we're going to jump into the 5 M's here.
Yeah. So look, I guess part of what's great about life is it gives us the experiences we need to have. And so going through those 3 different phases, it's really given me a library to pull upon of understanding different kinds of guys. I went to an all-boys school, didn't have a big social life outside of it. I was the nerdy A+ student kid. Wasn't getting any girls' attention kind of thing. A friend had to find a girl to set me up with for senior prom, or I would have been going alone kind of thing. So I didn't have confidence approaching women. I didn't really understand how to talk to them. I'd had my older sister and my mom, so I understood something about relating to women. I had no idea as a teenage boy how to get a girlfriend. And I went to college, and talk about overcompensation, right? It was just like, I need to figure this out. I'm finally in a co-ed environment. And so studies came 3rd place. And it was really all about that, learning how to connect and socialize. And when you kind of first discover that thing, or you unlock the power of that, you want more and more and more. And that very much became me in my 20s. Like it was, how many people can I meet? How many can I date? And it became this obsessive kind of fun quantity thing. And I just reached a certain point. And I remember when that phase ended for me. And yes, timing matters, ladies. You can meet the right guy at the wrong time. But I hit this certain moment where I met a girl, let's go on a date. And then she was like, how about Monday? I'm like, I can't. So I was seeing another girl Monday. This night, we went through the whole week. I was like, she's woman number 8. I don't have a night of the week for her. What the hell am I doing? It made no sense. I had to take a really good hard look at myself. I'm like, what is this really about, Barry? How many women do you need to date? 20? 200? Like, this clearly isn't a quantity question. What's going on inside? I had to start doing a lot of work. The hole I felt, love, all sorts of things. As I did that, as I healed a lot of the things that were underneath this, that I was compensating for, that's when I met Anna, and that's when I then had to go through that bumpy ride of understanding how to actually have intimacy and be in a relationship. It's one thing to get the guy or get the girl, and it's like, God, now how do I have a healthy relationship? And that was a big journey of growing up. So I very much like to say, like, I was a boy who's had to grow up through a lot of painful bumps and becoming a man. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, thank you for sharing a bit of that journey, and that helps us to understand a little bit more about how you know so much about this topic. So, with no further waiting here, because I know everyone's anxious, let's jump into these 5 M's.
5 M's already. Come on. All right. So let's do this. So the first M, and let me preface it by saying that the best way to kind of use them as we learn these things, knowledge in and of itself will do absolutely nothing to change anything unless you use it, right? So I just want to encourage anyone who's on this and the other man panel guests, you're going to get all this amazing knowledge. So grateful to you for putting this kind of thing together so people can have new insights. Please do something with them. Use them, right? So go apply them, whatever you're learning here. But the first M in that is maturity. It may sound self-evident and obvious, but there are types of maturity that a man can express and display. There's emotional maturity. Sometimes if we want a guy to be who we wish they were, then we will literally make excuses for their lack of emotional maturity. We will justify it, explain it away, right? So literally deceive ourselves of like, well, no, he's not. Maybe he's going to wake up. He's going to change. He's not that emotionally mature. But the truth is, emotional maturity has everything to do with, can he share his feelings? Is he someone who owns his light and dark sides, right? Does he only want to focus on what's good about him for his ego? Or is he able to embrace and accept things about him that he knows he needs to work on? That's emotional maturity too. Does he have the emotional maturity to communicate about sensitive and difficult feelings, issues, and topics? Without that emotional maturity and emotional availability, you'll always feel like you're trying to connect to the face of a mountain, basically. It's like it's there, but there's no deeper connection. There's no real intimacy now. So intimacy requiring vulnerability, it requires emotional maturity too. But there's other kinds of maturity as well. There's financial maturity. And that doesn't just mean does he have money. I've known a lot of guys that made a lot of money, but were completely financially immature. They had no respect for the way they treated money. They were poor stewards for it. They would make it and piss it away completely frivolously, right? Do they have a mature relationship with how they treat their money? And do they have plans for their money? Do they have actual financial outlook and stability in their life as well? There's social maturity. Look at the 5 closest friends, right? That kind of self-development cliche. That's cliche because it's true, right? The 5 people closest to you say a lot about who you are. Like my client in Vancouver, whose guy was off most of the week every week with what we began to call this bunch of merry morons who were just very immature guys that were a bunch of teenagers who just wanted to smoke pot and be up on the mountain. He was in his 50s, by the way, and doing this instead of looking for work. And it's like, so what's his social maturity level, right? And then there's also spiritual maturity. I had a client who got pulled in by a guy who was saying all the right things. Oh yeah, I'm into self-growth. Oh, met him at I think it was an Enneagram thing or something, one of these sort of self-understanding kind of ways, like Myers-Briggs and some of those. But he very much was doing it because he knew she was spiritual. It was him acting a certain way, but he didn't have true spiritual maturity. So it's not just, I have this religion or I went to this workshop. What is their daily practice? Are they living the principles of whatever their spirituality is? Again, it doesn't have to be religion. I've had atheist clients and agnostic clients. I was an agnostic for a long time and developed into my spirituality. For some of them, it's just getting up to see the redwoods in Northern California, and it takes their breath away and it takes them out of separation and ego. And they're like, wow, there's something bigger than me in life. But that spiritual maturity needs to be there, or you'll be one of those people who's like, why does my partner not grow with me? Right? So many of those frustrating things where the guy just wants everything to stay the same, not change, and you feel like you're stuck. You want to grow and develop. So that's the first M. And I'm curious to see sort of if you have any thoughts, questions, before we railroad.
Well, yeah, I mean, there's so much there that encompasses so much. Yes. We could talk on that one for the entire event. Sure.
It's true.
But I absolutely agree with you that it's really, really key, because this is going to be such a big part of what a woman's experience is with a man overall, by how he's going to show up. If he lacks maturity in any of these key ways that you were talking about.
Yeah.
And especially if he's not even aware that he lacks maturity in these areas, like maybe the 50-year-old that you were talking about who wanted to go smoke pot in the mountains with his buddies every day.
Which is fine to do if you're doing it in a balanced, responsible way, but when you're literally putting other important needs aside constantly to do it, not mature.
Right. I mean, this is such a key factor as to whether a woman is going to ultimately be happy in a relationship. And, you hit on something here too, Barry, that I think is really important, which is when you were talking about, a woman wishing he would be a certain way and hoping that he's going to change. So, I always take note if a client is saying something like, this would be so great if only he would do, or if only he would be this or this or this. And I'm like, yeah, but the if only, that's not the reality. That's not where it's at. And we can't wish or hope somebody into maturity. That is something that a man has to do for himself.
Totally. Yeah.
So there's so much we could say there, but it's obviously a very huge piece and something to pay a lot of attention to as you're getting to know someone. And I think any of us can have a bad moment, but I think what we're looking for here is patterns, right? We're looking for patterns and how he's showing up on a consistent basis.
Yeah. Just a couple quick things on that. I just did my most recent new webinar training that I did was fantasy is ruining your relationships, right? And I find I've realized this after 10 years of working on this, is we're so focused on our fear, our insecurity, fear of rejection, I'm not enough, like all these things that are absolutely core issues I work on with everybody. But the hidden killer is fantasy. Because it gets so much less attention, that it's camouflage, it flies under the radar, and it's all of the like, if only he could be who I wished he were, right? And that's where this non-acceptance of reality comes from. And then getting, the Zen saying, let go or get dragged. It's like, that's where you won't let go. So you just keep getting dragged, waiting and hoping for the fantasy part to come to fruition. And there's so much deep work that has to happen under it. The reason we're not letting go of the fantasy is everything to do with deeply unmet needs, and often subconscious ones. That's why we can't consciously make the decision, right? Like I did a client session recently, and a person being incapable at this moment of releasing someone who's not right for her at this moment had everything to do with who she wishes he could be. But it really all traced back to a moment with her father, of wishing he were the kind of father she wished he could be, right? So there's all these powerful things going on under the surface that can kind of drag us along into that non-acceptance. Yeah.
Well, yeah, and there's a lot of women out there who have a bit of a savior complex, or they think they can be the one to help him out of this, whatever area he's kind of stuck in. And, it can be nice to see someone for their potential. However, it's really important to be reality-based if you want to end up in a happy relationship. Because what I've also found, Barry, and you being a man, you can back me up on this, I believe, is men are resistant. They don't want to be your fixer-upper project. They're not going to appreciate your efforts in this regard.
Yeah, look, well, this is great because it dovetails right into this boy thing. I get a lot of clients. Another one of my trainings, they do stop being his mommy. Right? How powerful women attract men who act like boys. And so there's this whole generation of men, in a way, who show up imbalanced, and they're more than thrilled to find someone to be the strong, sorted out mommy and be financially dependent on them even, and other ways too. You be the decisive, you lift both ends of the couch, you work on the relation, you do everything. But at the end of the day, those men do begin to lose respect for themselves, just as their partner begins to lose respect for them. And then we begin the boy treatment, which is sulking, withdrawal, passive aggressive, that sort of stuff. Look, I empathize so much with women that sometimes I get into that reaction about it because it can be frustrating. And the other thing you might notice I slip into at times is I'll say we. And I'm like, I don't know where that comes from too long in the lifeboat with mom, where it's like, we do this to ourselves. Like, clearly I'm a guy, I'm not a woman, I'm not going through it. I identify very much with that rescuer thing, though. And I've had to learn that getting into coaching, where to have that line. Anyway, we could go on and on. We should probably get to the second M.
Yeah, we probably should. And I think the we thing just acknowledges our humanity, right? We're kind of all in this boat trying to figure it out together.
Yes.
So yeah, we better jump on to number 2. The second M.
We have a lot to get through. All right. Yeah. So the second one is mission. A man is at his best when he has a mission. And a mission can just be that sense of connection to something purposeful and important that's greater than himself, right? Why am I here? Some could think of it spiritually. For others, it's just utilitarian functional. Like, what is my purpose? A man who feels purposeless, unimportant, useless, anyone who's been with a boyfriend or a husband who has been unemployed may have seen a man go through the challenge of feeling useless. It is terrible for most men's self-worth. Men tend to have a lot of self-worth wrapped up in being performative. Not just who am I, but how am I doing? What am I doing? How am I performing, right? Thus, performance anxiety, these kind of things. So for a guy, though, being someone with a mission means that you're connected to something beyond your individual ego, right? So you're going to be less insecure. Because when you know that I was put here to be a voice for, like, for instance, what I'm doing in my life, goes beyond some sort of selfish gratification for me. There are a lot of things I'm capable of doing, but this is the one that I'm meant to be doing, right? And once you have that sense, you're more unshakable. Also, as a man, it allows you to hold your terms more easily. right? You understand what's important and what isn't. You want a man who's connected to what matters to him, because that's the same quality he's going to show up with in committing to your marriage or to a family. Like, this is important. A man who has no sense of that, who's still searching for that, I haven't found myself, I don't know what matters, not really sure what my purpose is, I don't know what I'm here for, he's still a boy. He's in his process, right? And that's another thing to really note. Boys do develop into men if they go on the right path and have the right influences. But they can also wander for decades, right? And by the way, you, and I don't just mean you, but all of you listening, you are not going to raise a boy into a man, right? It's something that he has to do within himself and through his male relationships and mentorships, right? But it's a deep inner path that he is on, seeking that, right? So that mission, though, I think when I do a presentation on this, the slide is like the fireman carrying the little kitten kind of thing. And there's everyone goes, oh, like there's something about it. And it's not just the uniform. It's here's a guy who's willing to put his life on the line for something that he thinks matters so much. Men in uniform, it's not just the uniform, because a guy wearing that costume at Halloween who really doesn't do any of that is never going to feel as attractive as the man who is really doing whatever that duty is. And the man in uniform is not necessarily service-oriented like police or military. It can be. But just that idea that the man has some sense of a duty to something larger than himself that's important to him makes him someone that's very clear on who he is. And that's something more stable and secure and trustworthy.
Well, and for women, speaking from the women's point of view, a man with a plan or a mission is also very sexy. It's very attractive to a woman.
That's right.
Because he's going to show up in the world in a way that's inspiring and that that women admire and respect. And what I've found too is if that respect goes out the window, if he loses his self-respect or she loses respect from him, then it tends to diminish those romantic attraction feelings dramatically as well.
Yeah, you can't give what you don't have. If you don't have self-respect, how are you going to give respect to people around you? Right?
Exactly.
Yeah. So that's why these 5 M's are so important, right? If you're deluding yourself because you're in your savior thing, because of maybe you saw it in your parents or whatever, or because you so badly want love or whatever it is that you need to convince you, look, when we're thirsty enough, we'll drink dirty puddle water. And to get it down, we'll tell ourselves, it's not that dirty. And so we'll do the same with men, love and this sort of thing, right? Like we'll diminish or be like, it's not so bad. But the truth is, if a guy isn't demonstrating these 5 M's, it's because he's still in his development. He's still a boy. Now, you also have to question, like, am I ready for someone who's fully in all of these, right? And as we kind of go through, you can check in with yourself. That's the flip side of this for your own checklist is, okay, have I had challenges handling a person like that? Like if a guy is very clear, like this is what matters most, do I feel ignored? Do I feel like this is competing with me so looking into some of those, and everyone has their right match, right? For some people, it's not the person who's 90% into his mission. It's like someone who's part of his mission overlaps with who you are or with family or building something. So this is also in knowing yourself as you listen to these 5 M's and which kind of man is the right match for you. Yeah.
Right. Okay. So what's M number 3?
M number 3 is a nice, obvious one, but we're going to make sure that you actually get the reality of it, not just the perception of it. And it's masculine. He has to be developed in his masculine. We've spent way too long thinking of the masculine as these external societal cues. Like a few years ago, and still today, one of the things that got really big again, as women could feel that men were losing their self-certainty in who they were, was where have all the men gone? Hannah Roizen wrote the great book, The End of Men, right? Where have all the manly men gone? And so suddenly there was a proliferation of big beards. It's so frustrating to me. You see these externalized expressions of what we think are manlyhoods, but they're literally being a caricature of manhood. I was at Esther Perel's conference for professionals, and she called it the masculinity paradox. And it was about this outward show of masculine cues and signals that didn't necessarily relate to a man deeply expressing who he really was as a man, all the inner emotions, right? The way we need to act to be seen as masculine. Masculine, feminine today has less to do in many ways with biology and more to do with these two sides of ourselves. We all have them. You know, the side of us that is more in our empathy, emotion, our availability to the moment, our expansive sensitivity, some of these things that would have been traditionally considered feminine. Now we can almost just think of them as polarities, like yin and yang in Eastern philosophy. And then the other polarity of being more directional, rational, goal-directed, moving past things, being able to tune out or focus out of what I'm feeling so that I can get to this thing. And those two sides are necessary. What we've done a piss poor job at in our society is knowing how and when to honor each and balance both so that we can switch in and out in a way that feels good to us. I work with powerful women, but and so many powerful women here like, oh, you have masculine energy, you're too much, you're hard. I am not about saying you need to get rid of that. Don't make people wrong for having a well-developed masculine or feminine. But have we underdeveloped the other side? It's like having a big left arm and a small right arm. Let's bring the feminine up into a powerful balance. We've lost the sense in our society of honoring that the feminine is very powerful, right? And sometimes it's for role models. I have a lot of clients who come in and say, I love my mom, but I do not want to be her. She did not role model being empowered in the way I want to be empowered. So we can have an idea that it looks a certain way. The feminine is so, so powerful. And so bringing that up is a really important thing. But a lot of men who kind of have lost their way have a very well-developed set of what we've traditionally called feminine qualities and haven't connected to, to their masculine inner qualities as much. And so then they can act like a guy, but they don't have the emotional certitude, the self-knowledge, the integrity to be able to follow through and deliver as a man.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this is another one we could talk about for the rest of
of our lives
time, because there's so much here, and I think there's a lot of confusion in this area too. A lot of confusion for women and a lot of confusion for men, because role models and stereotypical paths for both men and women have kind of been shaken up.
Yeah.
And I think there's so much confusion, and I think it causes a lot of confusion in relationships, because what I find is that most women, and there's never 100% here because we're all individuals, but most women, even the really strong, successful, independent women, still long for that safety or that comfort of being in the presence of a man who is in his masculine. But also women today want a man who also has some sensitivity.
Absolutely.
And some of that, emotional depth that we don't typically think of with the idea of, a macho guy. Yeah.
It's not going to either extreme, right? We don't want the dependency of, I need a man to this or that. I need a man to be had some bullshit. No, you don't. But not going to the extreme reactionary part of, I don't need anybody. I don't need it, to the point where it's, I don't even want to receive or be open to it. It's like my client who said she's very successful negotiator, had a tempestuous kind of thing with her dad, right? For dominance, control in the household. He didn't treat mom well. So she was like, if I identify with her, I'm just going to be the person who gets crapped on. But the masculine energy I'm seeing, right? But she also learned an unhealthy masculine from him. So she was a negotiator who would basically go into boardrooms full of men and crush them. And that felt fulfilling to her because it was healing some wounds too. Like, I'm not powerless in the face of this kind of male, right? So it was good, but it was reinforcing bad stuff. Ultimately for her, she had all these properties. She was doing very well financially, but she said, I know I can fix a loose doorknob, but I don't want to have to. Like, I want to be able to say, you get that? And he'll be like, yeah, don't worry, I got that. So it's that ability to say, how do I start creating the balance? Of course I can do these things. Doesn't mean I always want to. Like, I'd like to have some support. I'd like to be able to pass stuff off. But then that's trust in knowing that he's a competent man, right?
Right.
He's competent. And he's not going to let you down. Yeah.
That's right. That's right.
Right.
Yeah, we could talk about this one for a long time. I think also for women, the femininity piece is a little bit tricky too, because some women, when they even hear the word feminine, it can be an emotionally charged word. Like, does it represent weakness?
Yes.
Does it represent like the damsel in distress kind of thing?
Yeah.
Is it all about how you look? Is it all focused on, how you dress and present and all of the outward stuff?
Yes.
There's a lot of stuff that goes on around that for women as well.
Yeah.
And
it brings up all your associations from your past, and also quite often what you are trying to intentionally change about that. So you can feel crazy and have multiple, right? It's like I just got off a call with a client who was like, this is the way my mom was, and I don't want to be it, but it imprinted me. So I'm doing all these things to act this way, and yet then I end up having her stuff come through me too. So it's like I'm this, but we can feel paradoxical. Yeah. Sorry, I interrupted. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, that's fine. That's fine. And so I just am saying, and yet it's that polarity and that balance that makes a relationship in many ways, fun and interesting, and creates the romantic part of it, if you will.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, look, if we're, and this is, we can be balanced though. And I've been around strong, powerful my whole life. And so there's polarity in different aspects.
Right.
Here's the thing you do well, you take charge of this thing. But just the idea that there is polarity, and it really helps. Like, there are things Anna's great at that I am not great at. And there are things I'm great at that she's not great at. And it's nice to be able to hand that off and to have that trust in each other. Yeah.
Exactly. Okay, so number 4.
All right. How are we doing on time?
We're doing pretty good.
Are we? Good.
Yeah.
All right. So myself is number 4. A man has to know himself. When I was in my 20s, there was a night where I slept over at a lady's house. We woke up in the morning, and we're just kind of lying there and watching From Here to Eternity, for anyone who's seen it. Great movie. And there's a moment in that movie where they're together, him and the woman that he's seeing, and the Pearl Harbor air raid sirens go off, right? He's like, I gotta go, gotta go fight. And she's like, no, don't. She's worried he'll be killed. She's like, stay, and all this kind of thing. And concerned for him. And he says, no, I have to go. Like those are his guys out there, his buddies, his platoon, this squadron. You can't just abandon them. He goes and does his duty. Later that morning, I had to go into work. It was a Saturday, but I was going to go into work and do some stuff. And she said, oh, stay, kind of thing. And she started to kind of make it appealing to stay, let's say, right? I'll make breakfast, and we'll do this, and we'll get back into bed. And I was like, I said, here's the thing. I said, would I enjoy that? Absolutely. But I also know that it would mean me not going to do the thing I know I need to do, which means even though you'd like it in the short term, part of you would lose respect for me. Just like if that guy in the movie said, okay, fine, let him die. I'm going to stay here with you. In the moment, you'd like it, but you'd also lose your respect for that man. I'm like, so I need to go. I go, even though I'd love to stay here with you, I have to go. And she went, oh, damn it, you're right. And it's that sort of thing. A man who doesn't know himself is afraid to say no. He's a people pleaser. He'll try to, and these are the guys that seem great at first and they tell you all the right things, but ultimately they can't deliver because they're already overpromising. What they're basically doing is neglecting their needs because they're afraid they're not good enough. They're insecure. She won't love me once she realizes. So they're overpromising, overdoing, giving things up, or hiding and not challenging themselves. They can't say no. That ends really badly. Those are the guys you lose respect for who let you down, right? So as much as we don't like it in the short term, we want the man who knows himself well enough to lovingly, it's important enough, to lovingly say no. To say, like, me saying, I would love to do, of course I'd love to stay here and do all that, but I can't. Because this is who I am. And who I am is the guy who's going to go do what he has to do now. So that is the man who knows himself enough to stand up for himself, right? To stand for what he believes in, to stand for who he is. knows his values, and will stand by them. So he can lovingly and firmly say no, which keeps respect, keeps polarity, and he's not a boy.
Yeah, and it feels like it's in part about integrity too. He's being true to that self that he knows he is, or to his duty or his commitments.
Even when it's hard, especially when it's hard.
Yeah, and that's so huge too, because if you see a man displaying that kind of commitment to what is right or best for him, being willing to say no to those things that are not, it's also a sign he's going to be able to show up in the way he's committed to you.
Right. Bingo. Ding, ding, ding,
So
ding.
it's a big one. Yeah, that's a big one.
Yeah.
All right. So number 5, what's the 5th M? We're all dying to know the 5th M.
Drum roll, please. So the 5th M is makes me feel safe. And that, again, is more than just physical, right? Makes me feel safe, meaning I'm not wondering, where is he? Who's he with? Am I emotionally unstable, insecure because I don't know what he's really up to? I can feel something's off, something's wrong. Do I feel financially in fear about our future because he's financially unstable, takes big risks, is way in debt? Like, is this somebody who helps me feel a sense of security and safety? Or is this somebody who literally destabilizes my feeling of safety and security around him? Particularly if we've lived a past where we had any challenges differentiating from our parents in our teenage years. If there was a push-pull battle for independence, that teenage phase can carry through later in our life. And then we tend to love chemistry and drama. There tends to be up and down. And so literally, safe and secure can feel boring. Can feel, well, he's nice, but there's like no energy to it. So we can literally fall in love with the roller coaster, the up, down, the push.
Right.
Like I had a client who was like, I either date really nice guys and there's no chemistry, or I date like literally like wildfire fighter guys who parachute in to fight a fight, and we meet at a hotel and it's hot. And we set the sheets on fire, like this kind of thing. But he's here today. There's no dependability, consistency. So there can be issues in our past that predispose us to having a challenge, feeling chemistry and safety at the same time. A man who is stable, safe, and secure, but we can still allow some polarity, some tension, some attraction, right? So if you've experienced having those two types of guys, right? The bad boy who's bad for us, but feels so good, or the guy that is great for us, he's healthy, he's good, he's it's like boring, yawns, like I'm not feeling it. So if you ever experience that, then this particular one, a man who makes you feel safe, is one where you want to really examine what the old story is, what the wounds were around you not feeling like you can have both in one person. Because I guarantee you can. I have many, many, many people who've come in with that problem, and they now have passionate relationships, but they also share responsibility, stability, security, talking through things, so you can have both. Yeah, but he has to be someone who doesn't make you feel insecure, unsafe, triggers you all the time. But he can't be destabilizing your whole life all of the time. Otherwise, he's a boy, right? He's someone who is endangering himself emotionally, physically, financially, and he will do the same to you. Like my client who had won an Oscar and yet was with a guy that she's like, he's a crackhead. And I just can't seem to let go of him. And I'm scared I'm losing him. So I'm very seriously considering trying crack so we can be close. So we have something, right? It's like there's a guy who completely is unsafe. And now that's pulling her towards this temptation to do very dangerous things that are not safe, literally not safe physically.
Yeah, and you're right. And it's also true that we can be addicted to the drama of it all. Like that can be something that can feel like really exhilarating and exciting, and yet it can be so destructive to someone's life. I mean, I had one bad boy experience which was totally out of character for me, because that was never really the type of guy that I went for, Barry. But I had this guy, and the chemistry was just off the charts. But I mean, he was, he was the true definition of a bad boy in every sense of the word. And my life turned into chaos
Yep.
when he came into it. I mean, just absolute chaos in every way imaginable. And yet the attraction was so strong. And I think there was a period of time where I was sort of addicted to just all of that drama.
Yeah, of course.
Until, I realized it was going to totally devastate and destroy everything in my life if I were to stay with him.
Right.
And so, we can be vulnerable to some of these kinds of things based on maybe something that's happened in the past or, just the chemistry thing in general.
Wait, let me ask a question. That's so good. Oh, so good. Okay. So first of all, I work through something called the 9 environments of a person's life, like helping them design that. It's usually undermet needs in those environments that lead us to trying to get that need met externally. So for instance, a lack of enough variety and excitement in some area of our life. So we're like my client that with the ski guy, she was overly responsible in every part of her life. And at least he was silly and irreverent, didn't give a crap and carefree. And she's God, I haven't been carefree in years. So she externalized it in the partner, right? So it's compensatory. My question for you is, what was it, right? Because it sounds like you were like, it was almost a compulsion, attraction, chemistry. What am I doing? What was it that finally let you break free?
I didn't really let free until I really felt like I was in danger. I mean, actual physical harm and danger. Yeah. And I could absolutely see that if I allowed this to continue, my life would be completely ruined because I almost lost my job at that time as a result of him. Yeah. He had a huge negative financial impact on me. He actually stole a lot of money from me and used my credit cards without my permission and all kinds of crazy things. I mean, I didn't know it initially, but I came to find out that he was actually, someone who had a rap sheet a mile long. But he was a charmer, charismatic, and I swear, Barry, he could have won Academy Awards for his acting.
I believe it. Peter Pans are usually this way, right? They learn how to charm and tell you the things you want to hear. Right? They have a little smile kind of thing. It's amazing how destructive this stuff is. And we stay tied to it. Again, the unmet needs create a fear, right? A fear of losing someone who really gets me, a fear of someone who desires me, a fear of this kind of passion I've never felt before, I might never find again. Fear, until literally it's almost like you're running away from a dog chasing you, right? It's like, oh, I don't want that. I'm scared of that. I'm scared of being alone, scared of losing chemistry. And the only thing that can make us turn around and confront it is if a bear comes from that way, right? That's way scarier. So sometimes people are able to go do the work, coaches, therapists, whatever, to get healthy enough to reduce the fear and just let go of a guy like that. Usually it's got to get bad enough first to where you're like, I am more afraid I'm going to die than I'm afraid of not finding someone like this again. I hope I never find someone like this again. So,
right. And I'd like to say, I'd like to say I had that inner strength and was able to move through it on my own. But I did have to get to that point where I literally was afraid he might actually kill me.
Yeah, we don't want anyone to have to get to that point.
Yeah.
I'm very grateful that when you got to that point, you did something good. I had a client once who we were doing an inner freedom thing where we go back to like the root of why she was blocked with something today. And where it took her was a stepdad who was abusive, come home drunk, right? And that after our session, she called her mom and they talked. And what they discovered was the mom wanted to leave with her, but didn't feel like she could and that it would disrupt her because she was in like 16, 17, 18 in high school. So it's like, I stayed for you. I didn't want to like pull you out. And the young girl at the time, now a grown woman, said, I only didn't leave because I didn't think you would leave, right? And they basically were like, if we had both known this then, we would have left then. So sometimes it's like that little thing that we're so close to taking the action to end something, right? To stop being in a toxic thing we're tolerating. But it just takes that moment, like you said, of like, you know what, I can do this. I can do this. And those two, like, were both ready to leave. If only they'd known the other was and communicated, they could have spared themselves years of trauma. Yeah. Unbelievable.
Yeah. Yeah. And that experience was a turning point for me. It took me a while to recover from it all.
Of course.
And to, in more ways than one.
Yeah.
But it was a turning point for me. And thankfully, I've now been married to my amazing husband, who, as you went through this, he's definitely the true definition of a man, not
doing the checklist. Yeah. Everybody, if they have a guy already, they're like, okay, let's see.
Yeah. And I can say now, having had that dramatic experience in my past that I shared with you, and now being married to my amazing husband for the past almost 13 years, man, there's nothing sexier and more satisfying than a man that shows up as a man over a period of time. I mean, that is just such a gift and such a blessing.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm so glad you got that and you found that. It's been my experience that before any woman finally gets that, she confronts her demons and she becomes willing to be vulnerable and her full self with that man. And then that man usually shows up. So there's almost like a letting go of who you've been before you can let go of the crappy guys too.
Yeah, I mean, I can look back on that now, Barry, and go, what in the world was I thinking? But as I look back on it, I can say I was in a really vulnerable place when I met this guy, because I'd had a really painful breakup from a guy that I really absolutely was madly in love with and thought I would spend the rest of my life with, and he ended the relationship. So I was in a really vulnerable place. There were red flags right from the beginning with this guy, which I chose to ignore because of the chemistry and because I was so longing to feel like loved and wanted and desired.
Totally. Yeah. And so you don't judge yourself, hopefully now, right? You don't judge that person that you were because you did the best you could from where you were.
Yeah, I look at myself through the eyes of compassion, even though I look back on that now and go, where was I when I needed me?
Yeah, and that's it. And that's what so much of the work is. Just this morning was it this morning or yesterday morning? I was helping a young lady go back and visit different ages of herself when she was at these moments of decision with guys, and to visit them and like help her reaffirm owning that her intuition was right. You didn't need to hesitate and wonder, but I'm not clear. I don't know. I need more. And always seeking from the guy. Once he decides, maybe he'll tell me, just tell me that it'll be okay. And so her reaffirming, like, I have all the answers I need in my own intuition, my own knowing. I'm really strong and firm in my connection to my healthy self. I do what serves me. I don't wait for a man to decide that or determine that for me. Yeah. Including who you date. This isn't just people in relationships. We've done a little bit, right? Like detox and toxic. But for those who, I know a lot of people who take a sabbatical because they don't trust that their picker is going to bring in a healthy guy again. So they're like, the last 3 dogs I pet tried to bite me. Why the hell would I pet a dog? Like, why would I get around a guy? Like, I don't trust relationships. That's really about that thing, healing the wound, learning to trust your intuition, knowing you'll listen to it when the red flags go off, meeting your needs, taking that time to heal you so you are healthy enough to trust being in a relationship and who you'll pick.
Well, and that's a really good point too, because, after this very toxic relationship that I was in, I did have to have some time and space.
Of course, yeah.
For not only healing and kind of putting my life back together, but to also get, back in touch with my inner wisdom and clarity about what I really wanted, and to feel worthy and deserving of that, and to make my choices from a more empowered place. We're having such a great conversation. I feel like I could talk to you all day.
I know. We'll do it again sometime.
I really appreciate what you've shared, though. This has been a really content-rich and valuable conversation. I know it will help a lot of people. Barry, this has been so much fun to connect with you. I'm so grateful that our paths have connected at this point.
Yes,
you also have a great smile, by the way. Beautiful teeth and a great smile.
I'll tell my dentist. Thank you. Thank you, Michelle. And thank you, everyone, for taking the time. This is how you show yourself that you love yourself, right? You're showing up for you. You're doing this. God bless all of you. I hope that you have the love that you deserve in your life today. And if not, let's do something about it.
Sounds good. Thank you so much, Barry. And thank you all of you for being with us. And we'll see you soon. Bye-bye for now.